Hey Wolfpack, Angela Wolf here. How are you today? So I have a little surprise for you because I still am not getting my voice back. So instead of torturing you with that, I have put together a couple of my two favorite videos from It's So Easy. And I am live, by the way. Hi. You can see, Wynn's behind me. We are shipping all of the fabric that you all took off my hands last week. Thank you. But thankfully, I can do that. But my voice is like really bad today. So I wanted to say hi to you all. I've got two videos for you. Hi, Arnell. Hi, Paula. Many of you have asked about embroidering lace. How to embroider lace, where do you add it? My lace inserts for tops, jackets, trim, all of that, right? So I've taken two of my favorite videos and from It's So Easy, and I'm going to play them. I'm going to watch them with you because then I don't have to talk. That sound good? All right. I know. I was just thinking, I was technically right now supposed to be, thanks, Jenny, on an airplane going to California for a fabulous event. Ironically, the event was canceled and I lost my voice. So I'm not sure if that would have been so good anyways. Hey, Susan, great to see you. All right. So I am live streaming on YouTube and Facebook. I can see all your comments. So the first video I'm going to show you is from It's So Easy last season of how to embroider lace and put inserts into your garments. So you ready? All right, let's roll.
Change.
Hi, Angela Wolf here, owner of Angela Wolf Patterns and Online Sewing Academy. And we are remote on location at my studio again with the travel restrictions, so welcome. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to take a regular top that you own already or a pattern and add lace inserts to do some refashioning. So let's get started. The first thing I want to show you is how to set up for embroidery. I embroidered my own lace, but you could purchase it as well. But if you're going to embroider your own, I'm going to use a smaller hoop to help you through this so you can understand how to lay this out. So for an insert, for example, for a sleeve, you would need to make sure that your lace is going to be wide enough to fit the sleeve. That's the first thing. So even if you have a smaller hoop, maybe you're going to need to do multiple hoopings for this, you want to make sure that you cut your tulle fabric and your stabilizer the width that you need for your designs. So I'm using Sew and Wash Stabilizer. It washes away, it feels like fabric. This is not the sticky back that I used in a different episode. And this is tulle fabric, very soft, lightweight. I'm using it for garments. So there are different variations of tulle. Make sure you touch it and it's not stiff, like a party one that you put in party bags. All right, so here's this. And to hoop this, I would start at whatever end, whatever you're doing. I mean, it depends how big of a project you're doing, but I would start at one end. I hoop both of these together. Loosen up the hoop a little bit. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that the tulle is nice and tight and the stabilizer is nice and tight. It's actually much easier with a smaller hoop than a larger hoop. Because if you pull too hard with this tulle, I'll just show you what will happen. Pull like this. If that's too tight, what happens is you end up with, it ruins the fabric. You can end up with rips or some of this, it's like almost like a netting, and the netting looks really bad. So just be very careful, very gingerly, and just feel around and make sure that everything's laid nice and flat. So you're ready to embroider. All right, so that's the embroidery. So here you would have to imagine I would embroider this piece and then re-hoop and embroider this piece and on and on. So if you have a larger hoop, you can get finished a lot faster. All right, let's move that out of the way. And so here is my lace design. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that you have a nice flat edge that you're going to insert. You need a seam allowance, so don't trim too close to this, to your designs. These are serrated scissors, which just cuts right through this so nicely. You could also use a rotary cutter on this. And then on this side, I'm going to leave just a little bit more room. So by using this line here, I'm going to give myself maybe 1.5 inches on this side. like That fabric needs a little pressing, huh? Okay, so this is what I have to insert. Well, depending if you're going to use a pattern or you're doing this on ready-to-wear, the process is going to be pretty similar. So the first thing you need to do is measure. If you were to stitch right along the edge here, so let's say we're going to stitch right close to the end here, and my next stitch line was way up here. That's 5.5 inches. So that's 5.5 inches, say, that I could insert somewhere, so I have to take 5.5 inches out. All right, so if you do the math on that, I'm just going to use this pattern as an example. We've got 5.5 inches. Let's just say we're going to do an insert similar to the top behind me, the peach top. Down here, I would draw a line where I want the insert to go. So 5.5 inches, you divide that by 2. Two and 3/4 and 2 3/4. Nothing like making it difficult. I should have just made it 5 inches. Wouldn't that been better? All right, so that's what we need to subtract on each side. So 2 3/4. And I'm going to put a dotted line here, or a dashed line, because we have to have seam allowances that I have not talked about yet. So 1, 2 3/4. Okay, so this should fit in here. That looks just perfect, right? Now you need seam allowances. So we already have a seam allowance added to here. So I have about a looks like a 1/2 inch seam allowance on this end, and a little less than that on this end. I kind of cut that a little shy. So I just know that this side I'm only going to have a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And this end, I'll have a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So you need to add that back to your pattern. So now this is going to be your cut line. And I always just label my patterns so I know exactly what I have later. Maybe I save this pattern for another time. And then here you're going to do the same thing. So here we're only going to add a 1/4 inch because we didn't have very much room. Seam allowance, and this one is a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So this is going to be my cut line, and this is going to be my cut line for my pattern. So that's if you're sewing from scratch. Now what about if you have a top laying around already, which I just happen to have one of those. So here's a top that I was doing, I've been like decorating, kind of like an ugly sweater type thing, but I can never make up my mind what I want to do. And then I saw this lace and I thought this could be a lot of fun. So I actually cut the top open. These knit tops don't have a very large seam allowance. I mean, that's barely, gosh, maybe 1/8 inch. So by cutting that, I don't really need to rip all the stitches. I just cut right along the seam. So determine on your sleeve where you want the insert. So let's just say we're going to add something large like this in here, okay? Now, it depends, you know, I'm obviously going to have to cut some of this off, but you can just lay out your design, figure where you want it to go. And that looks like that's about the center. So I'm going to just slide this up. And this is tailor's chalk. There's different kinds of tailor's chalk. This is one that will press off, or there's one here that brushes off. I don't know which one you'll see better, but we'll just try both. So this is where we're going to insert this lace. Again, we're going to do the exact same process. So we had 2 3/4 on each end, right? Actually, I'll just use, I think you'll see better with this here now that we're on a garment. 2 3/4, 2 3/4. And then on this side, remember, we have a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So that's going to be our cut line. Does that make sense? And then on this side, we have a 1/4 inch. That's going to be our cut line. So again, just grab your quilter's ruler. Try to make the lines as even as possible. I love these because you can see through, but this shirt has some sparkles in it, so it's a little tricky to see. I'm using this line here as a guide to make this straight across. All right, there we go. So if I were to cut now, assuming we did our math right, this should fit in here very nicely. So now decide what part of the design is going to go where. So I obviously have more here than I need. So why don't I'm just going to line up this center one. This fold kind of represents the outside of the sleeve. So why don't we go there? So this piece you're going to fold over. Just put a couple pins there. So this side I'll have to be a little careful on how I sew because I don't have a lot of room there. And you'll want to run this through a serger probably, but if you don't have one, you can just run it through the sewing machine, which is what we're going to do here. So that's one side that we're going to sew. And then this side, I might as well just pin all of this at one time. This side is the one with a larger seam allowance. About 1/2 inch to be exact. And you can see it on here. So make sure, even if I cut that a little crooked, just make sure it's even on your top. Okay, so I'm going to reach my hand under here so you can see. There's the lace, there's the top. Let's go sew this. All right, I'm using my pink thread just so you can see it. Now, if you're going to run this through a serger, one thing that you could do is you could just do a basting stitch, and that will just hold this in place, and then run it through a serger. And you know what? That's what I'm going to do. So my stitch is going to be a stitch length of 5.0. This is also a good way to just test the fit to make sure your math was right, right on, I should say. Because if it's not, the sleeve's going to be too short or too long, one or the other. Okay, so here's one. See the lace? And now let's do the other side. I'll flip this around so I can sew with the lace. It's easier if you sew it with the lace side up, just by the way. Now this one, I have a very small seam allowance. It's just going to barely be touching the tips of that. All right, that looks great. So let's take a closer look here. And I'm just going to bring out my pressing mat. So here is the lace insert. I would run this through the serger now, making sure that it looks okay. And then press the seam allowances toward the garment side so it doesn't pop out of the lace.
All right. So I saw some of you asking questions. That's one of my favorite episodes because it's such an easy thing to do. So, all right, excuse my outfit. We have been running around. All right, so I saw some people asking, what's the difference of the serrated scissors versus the regular? When do you use different scissors? Serrated scissors capture that fabric. So just picture your scissors capturing that fabric. It's great with knits. It's great with, I saw somebody mention minky, any fabric that you have a hard time capturing. It will actually just cut, just imagine your fabric just sticking right into that scissor. So anyways, that's the serrated scissors. I use them for knits, for silk, for chiffon, for anything that's really tricky to cut. You could use either though. But the key to this, which you'll see in the next video, is making sure your scissors are super sharp. Because when you're cutting around that tool, you can actually just use the very edge of your scissors and capture around the embroidery. Okay, I saw a couple more questions on there. I'll just double check for you. In case you missed the beginning, I'm showing videos because I have no voice. Yeah, Janice, you could totally add lace to the bottom. That would look fantastic. Cindy, what weight thread did I use? You know, I just used the regular Brother embroidery thread. I think it's polyester. I'd have to check the weight, but I want to say it's 40 weight, but I have to double check. I don't know it by heart, but just nothing spectacular. And I have used rayon, which is fine. The lighter weight makes it a little finer. So that's totally your choice though. All right. Darlene, do you have any updates on what we won last month with Joe? Hey, Darlene, I have the list and there's 2 people that haven't replied and I'm going to give them until Friday. I'm going to try to track down their email addresses. So he doesn't have the list yet. I needed to wait till we had everybody, just so you know. All right. Yes, Susan, they're great for that. Oh, hey, Wilma. All right, let me make sure. I thought there was one more question and then I'll go to the next video. Hey, Ricky. Yes, lace inserts in a hoodie would be awesome. Oh, someone asked if you could use magnetic hoops. If you could use magnetic hoops on when you're making lace. Of course you can. Of course you can. Oh, thanks. I see all your tips. I've got the hot tea. It's working. All right, you ready? Let's go to the next video. And if you have questions, I'll take them. And then we're going to wrap up the show. But this is pretty good too. See you in a sec.
Hi, Angela Wolf here, owner of Angela Wolf Patterns and Online Sewing Academy. And we are remote again at my studio with all the travel restrictions. So in this episode, I'm going to show you how to make a couture lace trim. So I embroidered all of this trim, attached it to the jacket before I sewed it together. So let me give you some ideas for this. So here's an example. This is one that I'm starting to work on. You can see it looks beautiful with this fabric. And what I have here is tulle and wash away mesh stabilizer. So this feels like fabric. It's not the sticky back. It just feels like fabric. And this is tulle, which you can see here. This is a little bit different than when I showed how to do the inserts. The embroidery is the same, but the process is a little different. So the first thing you need to do is decide where this is going to go. So let's go back at this jacket and let me give you an example. So here, before I could start, I needed to measure how high my embroidery was going to go. So maybe this went all the way up to the collar. It doesn't matter. What you would need to measure, I'm going to need at least this much in length. And then if I'm going to stop at the side or I'm going to go all the way around, you need to measure that as well. The reason for that is, if you look closely here, you're going to embroider everything onto one piece of tulle. Now you could always piece things together. So here's one similar to what I put on the jacket. You could piece these together, but as you can see, the embroidery that I chose can make one continuous line. So ideally, if you have those measurements, then you can go back and just keep embroidering one big piece that can connect to the jacket. So I have corners for the bottom corner. How about take a look at the sleeve? That's another one that I did all in one, but you have to have the measurements for that. So let me just show you how to hoop using a magnetic frame. It's really simple and it's easy to maneuver your fabric around. So first of all, you need to cut your fabric wider, much wider than we would with just little inserts, okay? So as you can see here, I've got a lot more tulle over here that I can use to be able to continue to go around the jacket if that's what I chose to do. So I'm going to set this to the side for now. So with the stabilizer, you know, it only comes in certain widths, but if I know that I'm going to have a piece that's really wide, I might go this way and then don't cut this off. Keep it going, because then I can slowly piece this together and move the fabric. So you'll have your stabilizer on the bottom, and here's some tulle. I keep a big piece because tulle is very inexpensive. And instead of laying this out and trying to measure, I use the stabilizer more so as that, because it's really hard to see on this tulle fabric. All right, so if I were to start my design, and I wanted to start here and go that way, that's the idea for this one. So you can see the tulle, it's very wrinkly, And you need to make sure it's nice and flat. So with this magnetic frame, you just pop this into place. So guide this way. Make sure it's nice and flat. All right, then you go this way. See how that wrinkled? That's not so good. So pop that back off and make sure that it's nice and tight. There we go. And now this end here. So go back, double check that everything's laying nice and flat, which it is. Got my whole batch of fabric over there. And now you're gonna go and put the little pieces on. This frame makes it so easy to design your own fabric because when I'm finished embroidering this section here, you simply remove the magnets and slide your fabric down or up or around or whatever you're doing. All right, so I'm missing one magnet. It's somewhere, here, somewhere around here. Here it is. There we go. So this is ready to go into the embroidery hoop. So if you're going to keep this much mesh on here, just make sure that everything is kind of tight together. I will usually just bundle this up, and you just want to make sure that it does not get under the hoop when you go to embroider, because then you'll have a mess. So that's what I do for as far as getting started. All right, so I'm going to slide this out of the way. And bring in a jacket that I'm working on. This one here is a Couture jacket I'm working on. You can see I've already quilted the lining in here. And what you'll do with this lace insert, and I'll use this piece as an example, you're going to attach this to your jacket before you attach your facing, or in this case, I will just be folding the lining in to finish. But you're gonna attach this first. And you can do it by hand, but it's really easy to do it with free motion embroidery. So that's what we're gonna do here. So here's this piece. Again, if you had your corners, you'd wanna start and measure, pin these in place. And let's go to the embroidery machine, the sewing machine, embroidery machine, because I'm gonna show you how to attach this to the fabric. All right, the first thing I wanna point out is take a look at my screen. These are pieces of embroidery that I have put together so I can do one large hooping. So this is the front of the jacket and the side of the jacket. These little pieces can be inserted into here or attached in different ways. So I just like to grab a hoop and embroider a ton of these pieces. And then when I trim these, make sure that you leave enough tulle on each side so you can actually attach it to your fabric. All right, so if this is the front of the jacket, you would line the edge up to wherever you wanted it to go on your jacket. So if you're going to be attaching facing, make sure you leave it out of the seam allowance area. Actually, this is the right side. You can see I used just a lighter purple on the back. I thought that doesn't quite look right. Here we go. All right, so here's my tulle right here, and here's my tulle. So it might be a little hard for you to see. I'm using pink thread so you can see what's going on. I'm going to go back to into the sewing section, and up here I'm going to lower the feed dogs. Right now I just have it on a straight stitch, which is fine, and I would have this entire piece on my jacket, but I'm just going to show you this in a little area here. First thing you would do is start at the closest edge to where your facing is going to go, or the front of your jacket. And you can literally just stitch this into place. If you're stitching on the tulle, you won't be able to see it. Now I'm using pink thread so you can see what I'm doing. You see that? Now you could go as fast as you want, but for this, I'm just gonna stop for a second and just show you. Because I started that side, I can easily get in and out of these. Now, that isn't the neatest stitching ever, but you can see my pink thread. If you're using a color that blended in with your fabric, you would not see that. All right, so it's attached there. Now what do you do? So let's just say this is the front of our jacket or your sleeve insert, and this is going towards the inside of your jacket. So now I always like to work from this side of the design going in. It just seems to be a little bit easier. And let's go ahead and stitch around these flowers. Because I'm assuming your jacket, you're going to be, well, if you're going to wash it, you would definitely need some. But if you're going to dry clean it, you want to make sure that these pieces don't come off. Now again, if you're using thread that matches, you don't have to be as particular about maybe you hit the embroidery a little bit. So what I'm doing is I'm stitching on the twill, or not on the twill, on the tool. Twill tape is what I'll be using in the facing, not for this. Okay, let's see what we have so far. So you can see my stitching going around here. Again, you would not see that at all if you had similar stitching. And then depending on how big your lace is, maybe you need to tack down little pieces in the middle. And if so, just go from one area to the other. Can you believe how easy this is? So that green jacket that I showed you at the beginning, I think it only took me maybe 15 minutes to do the trim on that entire jacket. But we're not quite finished yet. All right, so this is what I have, but I still have all of this tulle here. So let's go back up here, and you're gonna need a very sharp pair of scissors because this part is really tricky. I even need my glasses for this because you don't want to rip the tulle. So similar to here, you can see this is the front edge, which is what we did here, and then attach that outside edge. Now we need to get rid of the tulle. Just grab your scissors. And one thing I don't know if I mentioned, by the way, on the back of this fabric is fusible interfacing. You need fusible interfacing on the back of here because that is what supports the fabric to support your free motion embroidery on there. So I'm just going to grab this. And watch how you can rip this with your hand. So you have your scissors here, and watch how I'm just pulling. It just rips off. And if you get it going really fast, as long as you're using super sharp scissors, notice I'm just using the tip. These are gigantic scissors. But I'm just using the tip because it's so sharp. I can get all the way inside. I got all of that out of there. And then you'll go down this side and do the same thing. This is actually my favorite part. Ripping it away. All the tulle is gone and all you see is lace. And that's how simple it is to embroider your own lace and embellish a jacket that makes it look very expensive.
What? Okay, I had myself on mute. So I saw Joanna saying, "Is this have we seen this before?" Yeah, you have seen this before, but I actually am live. I just lost my voice, so those were two great videos for you. Someone asked, I think it was, what's the difference between tulle and lace? I make the lace on the tulle. So it's the same fabric, except I added embroidery to it to make it lace. Make sense? All right. So if you have any questions, I'll answer them real quick. Otherwise, I'm going to let you all go. And someone said, "Wow." Well, my hair's like this because Wynn and I have been running around doing shipping. So bad hair day, bad voice day, you take your pick. Oh yeah, Karina, I did finish that. So Paula, do you sew the trim before you hand sew the facing? So yes, I put the trim on before I put the facing on. I did for this particular jacket. You don't have to, but I did because then I could leave that tulle right into the edge of the seam. Make sense? Awesome. I agree, Cindy. I'm only using one layer of tulle, just one. And someone asked if I use sticky back tearaway or sticky back stabilizer. No, I did not for tulle. I prefer to just have the wash away because the stickiness with the tulle when it's an open weave, it just kind of gets messy for me. But that's my own preference. All right. Any other questions? Oh, it's so nice to see you all. And thank you. Thank you. Lorraine, that's like nothing. You guys cleaned house on my fabric. So I'm so excited. That means I can get more. I know. Wynn's been helping me pack. I think the UPS guy is going to disown me after this week. All right. So I will be live tomorrow on Brother's show, probably in a quiet way. And I'm just laying low this week. So if you're looking for me, you know how to catch me. Send me an email. But it's so nice to see you. I couldn't miss the opportunity to hang out with the Wolf Pack for a little bit. So have a good day, everyone. Bye.